of November. 1 week from today, we will have runoff elections in the state of Mississippi. And one of those positions that is going to be a part of the runoff election is for a spot on the Mississippi Supreme Court. We are joined by Presiding Justice Jim Kitchens, who has been on the Mississippi Supreme Court since being elected in 2008. He represents District 1, Place 3. Justice Kitchens, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, sir.
So let's talk about general election versus runoff. Obviously, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving is not necessarily the single most ideal time for a runoff election. This, for both you and your opponent, largely, I would think, is going to be about turnout.
I think you're right about that. And, we have to play the hand that's dealt us. I wouldn't have chosen that time for an election, and I doubt that my opponent would have either. But that's the way it is, and we'll work with it.
Justice Kitchens, you've been on the Mississippi Supreme Court for a while. Talk to me about what you think has been, in recent years, the most important thing that the Mississippi Supreme Court has had to deal with.
Well, I wish I had known I needed to think about that, because that covers a lot of ground. I have been there for 16 years.
Yes, sir.
And during that time, actually, there's nobody there now except Chief Justice Randolph, who was there when I arrived. And we have dealt with every kind of case that comes before the Mississippi courts. We have, I think, handled the cases with dispatch and quickly. And compared to what the court did many years ago, I can recall when the court would take 3 or 4 or 5 years to hand down a decision. We have expedited the business of the court as much as we could without getting in too big of a hurry and making mistakes. The court, to a person, to a justice on the court, is very conscientious. I think everybody there takes extremely seriously the work that we do, because what we do affects every person in this state. Every decision that we make establishes a precedent that has to be followed by the other courts of the state. We are at the top of the court system. We are the court of last resort. We take our work very seriously, and the fact that the court has done that, I think, is the most important thing we could have done, was to be conscientious about the work and attend to it in a prompt and careful manner.
Justice Kitchens, you were first elected to public office in 1971 as a district attorney in, central Mississippi, and you're still serving today. Why are you still working?
Well, first of all, let me clarify something. I was elected in 71.
Okay.
Then those counties are down in South Mississippi. I live in Copiah County, and at that time, the other counties of that court district were Lincoln, Pike, and Walthall. So we're all the way down to the Louisiana line in that district.
Pretty big district.
Indeed. I served in that capacity for 9 years. I have not been in public office my whole career, as has been implied in this campaign. I left the district attorney's office after 9 years because I had a child that had cancer. Mary and I had to pay enormous medical bills, and we could not pay them on the $36,000 salary of a district attorney. We had 5 kids then. And so I left. I could either stay in the DA's office and take bankruptcy and beat the doctors out of their money,
sure, or
go back to work as a private attorney and pay those bills. And so that's what I did. And so I was in the private sector from the end of 1980 until the beginning of 2009. That's more than 30 years. I had been in private practice before I was district attorney. So I've been in the private sector a lot longer than I've been in the public sector. But in the public sector and in the private sector, my greatest delight is helping people and seeing the result of my labors that manifests itself in good things in people's lives that I have helped. I think I'm helping people now. As I serve on the Supreme Court, I'm helping with the quality of justice that people receive in the state, and in private practice, I was able to help a lot of people.
And maybe you answered ultimately what I was getting to. I was not trying to imply that you had been in elected office that long, just that that's when you first were elected, and it had been in the legal community in one capacity or another for a really long time. And I think if I were sitting in your chair, I'd be in a spot where, like, you know what? I'm ready to kick my legs up and prop my feet up and enjoy all of this work for a while. But my larger question was, what is it that is continuing to drive you at this point of your career to say, I want to serve another term in the Supreme Court?
Well, I know that I am at the top of my game. The first rule is know thyself, and I know myself pretty well. And I know that the work I am doing now is better than the work that I did when I first got there. I know more about what I need to do and how to do it at the Supreme Court. And I think I'm doing the people of the state of Mississippi a lot of good. I didn't think that you were implying anything by your question, but there have been some commercials that suggested that I've been in public office for more than 50 years, and that is absolutely false. I have not.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. These judicial elections are so fascinating to me because they are nonpartisan elections, and yet none of us seem to really be nonpartisan one way or the other. I think it presents challenges for those who are running for office because you're trying to rally a base of support one way or the other. I've heard people talk about constitutional conservatism, and I've heard people talk about liberal judges, and I don't know how all of that fits together when you're talking about a nonpartisan race. How do you view that?
Well, I can speak only for myself. On the court, I have worked very hard not to be conservative and not to be liberal, not to be anything other than a guy that follows the law of the state of Mississippi. That is my guide. That's what drives me, is a devotion to the law. Not liberalism, not conservatism, but a devotion to the rule of law in the United States.
When you look at the Constitution of both the United States and the Mississippi Constitution, there seem to be two schools of thought. Feel free to correct me if you think there's something else to this. I've heard people say the Constitution is as it is written forevermore, and it is to be interpreted. And then I have heard people say, no, this is a living, breathing document that, you know, as time goes on, you've got to adapt. You've got to try and think what they might be thinking at this point. When you look at the Constitution, both of the United States and the Mississippi Constitution, how do you view that in terms of the decisions that you make on the court?
Well, the idea that it is a living, breathing document sounds good metaphorically, but I don't think there's any real truth to that. What the Constitution is, it is adaptable to the times. It was an 18th century document that we are still using and going by in the 21st century. There were things in the 18th century Constitution that were just abhorrent to us now, like that every black man ought to be counted as I think it's 4/5 of a person or something like that. That's absurd to us now, and so we don't. The Constitution as written is not entirely applicable to our way of life now. So we have to adapt to it. We have to make it. It's not like putting a round peg into a square hole exactly, but we have to adjust our thinking about the Constitution as new things develop. For instance, we're in the electronics age. I had to write a case recently where we determined, as a case of first impression on the Supreme Court, whether a contract can be consummated by emails. Electronically or by any kind of electronic messages. And we held yes, they can. So, you know, Thomas Jefferson never thought of that in the 18th century, and neither did anybody else that was writing the Constitution back then.
No, they telegrams took a little while longer at best. Maybe
they didn't even have telegrams
in. Maybe they needed the carrier pigeon. We've got about a minute left, Justice Kitchens. I want to give you the same opportunity that I have given others as they have sat in the chair that you're sitting in, to the people of Mississippi who are your potential voters. What is your request to them in terms of asking for their vote?
I know that everybody is replaceable. I know I'm not indispensable. I'm going to be replaced. Everybody on the court is going to be replaced sooner or later. I would like to be replaced by somebody that has the experience that is necessary to do that work. Senator Branning is a very nice person, and I didn't know her previously, but she has not done litigation law practice. She has not tried, as far as I can find, a jury trial in her life. That's not a criticism. She has a very honorable segment of the law field that she practices in. She closes loans for people and other minor real estate transactions and major ones as well. That's
about 10
important,
seconds
but
left.
it doesn't give her any experience that's relevant to the work on the Supreme Court.
Justice Kitchens, thank you for your time this morning. We wish you the best and a happy holiday season coming up to your family.
Thank you. Likewise to you, sir.
This is the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. We'll take a quick time out. We are back with you after this, and we've got something to give away. You're not going to want to miss that.